Good morning, everyone. There has been a lot of discussions and reflections on the year passed by, but it's time to look at the future and plan for exciting as well as uncertain times we're going to face in the next year. Over the next 20 minutes, I'll talk about why 2021 is a year of growth was. Also, talk about why we believe that tech giants as well as the upcoming startups are poised to win this war, and also give some approaches and suggestions on what can rest of the industry do to be able to compete and win during this tough period. Let's start with why we think 2021 is going to be a year of growth was. Sometime last year, my son asked me, "What is money?" And I struggled to explain. It took me a quest to understand basics of economics, and even today, I really can't explain to a kid. But one thing I do understand is a country is a superpower not because they have nuclear arsenal or a great military, but they're a superpower because they're able to print their currency freely during periods of crisis. And you can see that because of all the fiscal and monetary policy changes, there has been over $8 trillion of liquidity created in the market. And that has helped people who are in need as well as companies which have been impacted by the pandemic, but it has also helped companies which have not been that impacted and some who have been benefited by the pandemic. And this has resulted in record profits for the corporate industry. So now you look at quantitative easing as well as profit pool created by the top companies, and there is significant amount of cash in the system. And now because of that, companies are looking to create new asset classes. You have seen a cryptocurrency, the value increasing dramatically over the last year. There are also new technology such as NFT, which is allowing people to store their wealth in things like digital art. Crypto and NFT is a topic for some time, but let's just talk about what are other trends which is really driving the growth in the 2021. First is really the continuation of digital acceleration, what we saw starting in 2020. Second is really the growth of countries in Asia. And third, and the most important, is a focus on sustainability and decarbonization in the coming decade. So these are some of the key trends. We will dive in a little bit deeper in each of these trends. First is the digital acceleration and digital transformation. The quantitative easing has created a lot of cash in the system, and whenever there is quantitative easing, there is a concern around inflation. But technology has always been a deflationary trend. Look at examples. Because of digital transformation, the cost of advertisement, communication, entertainment, many of these have come down, and there is going to be a lot of investment going into areas in technology which is going to improve productivity as well as reduce overall cost. That's one of the reasons you're seeing significant amount of investments in companies in automation, companies in low-code, no-code, and companies which are creating cloud infrastructure. This is just really the beginning, and a lot more to come in digital transformation. The second trend is really the growth of Asia. If you see how the pandemic was, even though the pandemic started in Asia, the Asian countries have managed it relatively better than other parts of the world. And that's increased confidence in the investors about the region. And you can see some examples. Jio, one of the largest telecom provider in India, has got investments from Google, Facebook, Amazon, and Microsoft. Probably they're the only company which got funding from 4 different tech giants. These companies are also investing directly in India, and it's going to continue to increase over the next few years. And China has gained significant amount of confidence the way they reacted to the pandemic, and because of that, they're going to focus and continue to focus on growth in their consumer markets as well as improving overall productivity. So more global companies are going to compete for market share in Asia in 2021 and beyond. The third key trend is the focus on decarbonization. Young activists started this journey a few years ago. Now it has been embraced by governments, foundations, think tanks, and large corporates. Bill Gates wrote an interesting book just a couple of months ago, which talked about the greenhouse gases which is being produced by various aspects, be it how we generate and store fuel, how we manufacture, how we grow food, how we travel, how we build and live in buildings, and also give a playbook of sort in terms of how you can reduce the overall greenhouse emissions. And you also have companies like BlackRock, which are aggressively evangelizing as well as mandating the company they invest in to focus on decarbonization. The trend has become so dominant, even companies which are focused on oil and gas like Shell had come out and said by 2050, they're going to be a net zero company. And that would require them to completely reconfigure their business to focus on alternate fuels and also help their customers decarbonize. Think of an oil and gas company really committing to completely change their product portfolio. It's a huge bet. This is going to be a massive human endeavor, not just to reduce, but also reverse climate change over the next decade. So these are some of the key trends which is going to really drive growth in 2021 and beyond. And we believe there are two kinds of companies which are going to really compete and win in this area. First is the big tech companies, GAFAM, Google, Apple, Facebook, Amazon, and Microsoft. These companies created over $159 billion in profits in 2020. I'm not talking about revenue. I'm talking about profits, $159 billion in profits. And the next set of companies are the technology startups. With more quantitative easing, a lot of money is going to move into venture capitalists as an asset class. That is going to in turn result in more funding, both in terms of number of companies getting funded, as well as the quantum of funding for each company. And there are $300 billion invested in venture capitalists. Venture capitalist companies invested over $300 billion in 2020. And this number will continue to increase. And these startups are really nimble and fast. So you have these large tech companies and you have these startups really driving one on terms of profitable growth across any industry which is getting digitally disrupted. Another set of companies which are really focused on speed and innovation. And we also track what we call as the top 1,000 ER&D spenders. And if you look at the bottom 80% of these companies, they just spend about $239 billion in R&D. And this part of the industry is what we think is going to struggle to compete because they neither generate a lot of profits nor have the speed and agility to drive innovation like how the startups do. And there are several constraints which impacts these companies. And we'll talk about some of these constraints in a little bit of detail. The first is the leadership in these companies. Many of these organizations have a top-down culture. Their CXOs come up with a strategy, they come up with a vision, and they give the marching orders for the teams to go and deliver. But these CEOs are not genius. There are very few genius CEOs, be it Elon Musk and Steve Jobs, who can understand and imagine what the world needs before anybody else understands, and have the necessary capability and able to take the right sacrifices to be able to execute on the mission. Very few CEOs of global 1,000 companies are such geniuses today. The second is really the talent war. We are in a period of climate transition, also in a period of talent transition. What I mean by talent transition, look at the digital priorities of companies in each industry. Take an automotive industry, they're working on ADAS. The energy industry is working on decarbonization. Looking at media and telecom, working on OTT. SaaS companies, enterprise software companies are working on SaaS. All of these different industries require very similar skill set, be it UI, UX engineers, machine learning engineers, data scientists, and so on. There are very limited set of engineers with these skills, especially in areas like Silicon Valley. Both the big tech giants and startups have an unfair advantage to attract this talent. So the rest of the industry is going to find it very hard to attract this talent, be it in Silicon Valley or in the rest of the hot talent locations. Even if you assume these organizations are able to attract the right talent, they have a major constraint in their organizational culture. The organization culture of these companies is based on scarcity and status quo rather than growth and abundance. Because of that, the teams are not very sure about taking any initiatives if there is some chance of that being a failure. There is a lot of fear of failure within the organizations. They have a labor mindset rather than an owner mindset. And also the organizations have significant amount of information barrier. The information is in silos. There is an information asymmetry between the leadership team as well as the rest of the organization. This creates significant amount of constraint for organizations to drive bottoms-up culture. We do believe it is possible for you to solve some of these constraints and drive bottoms-up innovation within the organizations. And we call it an innovation flywheel-led transformation. So innovation flywheel-led transformation allows you to create a continuous flow of innovation within the organization and not just create the pipeline, but also simultaneously improve the innovation capability of the organization. And the flywheel is driven by three key forces. One is humanocratic virtues. Second is entrepreneurial DNA. And third is execution excellence of these companies. Let's focus on each of these forces in some level of detail. First is humanocratic virtues. The organization needs a set of virtues they sign up for, which uses the collective intelligence of the organization and provides a common purpose and passion for the team. And this is a big pivot for top-down organization cultures. First, it's about sharing information broadly, openly, and deeply through the organization. And also ensuring you're removing leaders who are creating silos and freedoms in the organization and promoting leaders who are secure, transparent, and collaborative. Second, it's very important to understand the decision workflows in the organization and see if there are upward delegation of decision making. And many organizations, there is a lot of upward delegation of decision making for no reason. To ensure you empower the team so that the decision making is done at the lowest level of the organization. Third, whenever we talk about innovation to organization, especially in industries which are deeply regulated, there is a concern, hey, my regulation team is not going to really allow me to drive this innovation. However, it's starting to change. We see even banks adopting to things like Spotify-based agile model, but also solving for risk. So it's important to provide the freedom and simultaneously solve for risk. And fourth, as author Nicholas Taleb says in his book, Anti-Fragility, teams have to bring their soul to the game. And for that, the organization has to provide the deep insights and inspire the team. And the team should have the same purpose as the organization purpose when they come into work every single day. The second force is really the focus on entrepreneurial DNA. We did a research to understand the key traits which is required for individuals in an organization to act like corporate entrepreneurs. We came up with 8 key traits, and these traits has to be not taught in classrooms, but provided in just in time to the teams throughout the innovation value chain. Let's talk about some of these traits. For example, business acumen. If teams are able to understand the organizational mechanics and how organizations make money, it provides them a lot of context about your own company and not just come up with ideas based on their daily jobs, but really look at it from the customer angle as well as from the angle in which the company makes money. Second is relentless persistence. If you're a startup and you want to raise money, you can meet with hundreds of venture capitalists. If 99 of them can say no, but if one of them says yes, then you still get funding. But in a large corporate, you have to get yes across the hierarchy. Even if one person says no, your idea doesn't get funded. So you need teams which has relentless persistence to go after the idea and continue to convince various people in the organization. Second, the teams also have to have global influence. They should know how to sell their idea, not just one level above, but multiple levels in the organization. And these teams could be in a remote location. So how do you drive global influence? It's again another trait. So all of these 8 traits are very, very critical for every individual in an organization to truly operate as a corporate entrepreneur. Next is execution excellence. Execution excellence helps organizations to move forward towards the larger objectives. First is setting the right stretch objectives. It could be focused on breakthrough innovations, it could be on product innovation, it could be on incremental process innovation. But being very specific on the set of objectives is very critical. Second is creating a set of repeatable processes for driving innovation. There are a lot of different innovation methodologies which have been built out. For example, the lean startup model will allow you to drive your innovation through a stage gate process. Third, having a single point of accountability for each innovation and also a single point of accountability for the overall innovation governance process. And finally, it's not only important to measure the output, but also measure the inputs. And we suggest you use frameworks like OKR, which is evangelized by Andy Grove and followed by companies like Google. Objective, key results, and initiatives. Once you set the objectives, key results allow you to get to the objectives, and the initiatives will allow you to get to the key results. Having OKR will allow your execution a level of rigor. So let's look at how we can get all of the 3 forces across the innovation value chain. Let's start with exploration. When a company is looking at exploration, the key for us is to ensure the overall team and the leadership understands the overall opportunity space. Creating opportunity workshops along with the leaders to understand the key industry trends and understand the organization priorities will ensure the innovation focus is on the right direction relevant to the organization. And to be able to do that, you need to provide the right training on things like design thinking, corporate strategy, breakthrough innovation for the team so they're able to explore and come up with interesting ideas. And third, to ensure there is significant amount of information sharing, be it technology IP, make your proprietary platforms available, even your sales channel available for the teams so you can understand what the context of what the innovation is required for. The second step is ideation. And it is important to have a very structured process for ideation. There are a lot of idea creation activities such as hackathon, idea day. Using some of these activities will provide you a set of ideas. The key is to provide the right context for the teams to come up with the relevant ideas. And also train the teams in doing customer interviews, understanding customer segmentation, doing ethnographic studies where they can understand the unsaid and unmet needs of customers, and provide the right level of empowerment to the team so they're able to make the right decisions as they come up with the ideas. The third part is really to ensure the ideas go through a rigorous process and you are able to kill the idea that doesn't make sense and focus on ideas which is going to create a lot of deep impact. And the funding of these ideas should be focused on the individual teams creating a prototype, and they're also provided the right level of training around business modeling so that they're able to create these ideas as well as pitch to the internal stakeholders. Many of these teams are building these ideas during their free time so that you have to continue to reinforce the organizational purpose so they're inspired to be able to come up with the idea, inspired to bring their soul to the game every single time. And as you drive through this ideation process, you will get certain ideas which could potentially be a breakthrough ideas. These breakthrough ideas should be spun off into a separate business, could be spun off into a separate company, or could be integrated into the business unit. There are different models in which you can harness some of the ideas which is coming out from the innovation process. Hire is a great example of a company which is able to compete with the large tech giants as well as nimble startups. The principles of the companies are aligned to the 3 forces we talked about. First, the company signs up for a key virtue where every individuals in the company has to face the user, create value to the user, and thereby create value for themselves. Second, anybody in the company can come up with ideas which is relevant to the customer. And today the company has over 200 micro enterprises. They also have a dedicated team in the organization which enables the right innovation culture, provides the right systems and processes for the teams to drive innovation, not just for the teams, but also provide to the overall ecosystem which is built on top of Hire. Third is their focus on execution excellence. For example, there are a lot of complaints from the customers about faulty refrigerators. Their founder brought all their employees in the yard outside the plant and smashed with a sledgehammer 76 of the faulty refrigerators. That shows the focus of quality about the company. The company today, they are in the bottom of the global 500 companies and still able to outcompete some of the top companies which are creating a lot more profits as well as nimble startups in their organization. Hire is a great example of a company which is able to out-innovate competition. If Hire can, so can other companies in the bottom 80% of the engineering and R&D spenders who can drive a bottoms-up innovation-led transformation within their organization. If you want to learn more about innovation-led transformation, do reach out to us. Thank you.